My name is Kreps, and I'm a founder of a company called Confluent. I thought speaking at Databythebay was a pretty great opportunity to talk, in this case, to a bunch of people interested in data and data pipelines, and particularly in the area that I've been working. So it was a fun opportunity to get to talk to a bunch of people who are kind of deep in the thick of it. I think what's happening in the world is just maybe data and software. I think it's getting a lot more central in what companies do in people's lives. I think that makes it possible for programs to deal with data to do much more interesting things than they used to. So whereas maybe data processing has always been used for kind of back-end optimization of big businesses and government applications, now it's kind of really finding its way in a much more central manner into people's lives. I think that's what's so exciting about it. And then I think beyond that, there's been big changes in technology just to keep up with the volume of data that makes a lot of things that would have been harder to do before impractical or not cost effective suddenly totally possible. And so I think that combination of how the world's changing and how the technology is changing has kind of happened together and has left everybody pretty excited about the area, hence all the conferences. So my talk was about Apache Kafka and about processing streams of data and thinking of data as a stream of something that's continually being updated or changing instead of kind of a static table or dump of data. And that I think is a kind of paradigm that's just now coming to the forefront in how people deal with data, how they process data, how big companies design their software stacks. And so my talk covered Apache Kafka, which is a system I've worked on for a long time, and two of the new things in the kind of Kafka ecosystem, a framework called Connect and a framework called Kafka Streams. And so I kind of went into both of those and what they do and how they relate to Kafka and how they relate to this kind of overall vision for streaming data. I guess my advice for becoming a data scientist is, learn your math and then work with data. I think the best data scientists I work with, I think, combined, a strong theoretical background with a lot of practical, hands-on application. I think the problem, actually addressing real problems and benchmarking yourself against those, I think tends to develop the kind of skill sets that people need to be good at this stuff. I think that's what kind of takes people out of a more theoretical mindset and into something which is actually quite hard, which is to kind of beat scores or test beds against real problems over and over and over again. I think that's probably the process I would follow. Fortunately, it's an easy time to get a job in this area. So I think just starting low on the totem pole and working your way up is, I think, a great way to learn stuff. Yeah, so the relationship between data science and data engineering is really interesting. So I think in the short term, maybe data engineering, kind of building the pipelines and plumbing is the more important thing. In a sense, it's kind of like the difference between building a foundation and then decorating the house. So at first, building a foundation is really important. Once you have the foundation, you really don't think about it that much, but there's a lot of decoration that will continue happening over and over and over again. I think the relationship is sort of similar in that right now the tools are pretty immature. So there's a lot of them. It's hard to use them. It's hard to actually put them into production. Over time, that kind of fades, and it becomes much more kind of an off-the-shelf problem. However, I think the use of data is actually much harder to commoditize. So as I think a lot of these pipeline technologies, they reach a certain level of maturity, they become kind of ubiquitous, and then you just kind of can assume they're there. And they become boring in the way that operating systems are boring. meaning boring because they mostly work. And when you kind of notice them when they don't. The problem of how to actually use data and apply it to the challenge at hand for business, that I think is actually much, much harder to commoditize. So it doesn't lend itself really to being turned into some piece of reusable infrastructure. It's harder to turn it into an open source project people can download. It actually requires people thinking about what the problem you're trying to solve is, what data you actually have, trying to model it. And I think we're not that close to making that a kind of point and click process. So I suspect that in the short term, we kind of ignore the infrastructure side maybe too much. But in the longer term, the definition of success will be we can ignore it totally safely, and you really don't think about that stuff.